and still use this gadget, and it being an actual solution is it's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So what about cross-sexual opportunities? Yeah, can you share some insights on what's driving Africa's early entry, and more importantly, could you provide some examples?
Yeah, I mean, we could start looking at education. There's quite a push, but the issue is that you can't really push VR, AR without the backing of the government. It needs to be a tool that is being monitored, its impact is being monitored. And that's one of the issues that we found, that we have the business model, we have the content. What we're lacking is a backing from the government to actually go to schools and see, does this help the weaker students? Does it provide a more standardized way to learn? How can we save money on school trips that are quite far away? I mean, it would be amazing to have a scenario whereby people in the middle of nowhere having to see Europe and being inspired, like, I want to go there one day, you know? So education is a bit tricky, but it's getting there. There's, of course, the manufacturing sector, which is now quite hot. Many, it will be a digital marketing too. Tourism is big. We've worked with government of Kenya, but not just Kenya, but also South Africa, to kind of create curated and like teasers of these places. So like you take them to airports, you take them to conferences such as this, and people are able to experience it. They're like, I want to go there. That's also kind of hot. Yeah, I think primarily those are the main industries. So healthcare and all these others are quite tricky, so we're approaching it through universities. Okay. But yeah, those are the main industries, I would say.
So many a time when we hear about the metaverse, it sounds like something that's out there.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I think in the modern scenario, the current scenario, a lot of the metaverse content is not African or even local in terms of Kenyan for that matter. So what do you think it'll take to get more and more local content? That's from a Pan-African perspective and obviously a Kenyan perspective. And what are some of the challenges you think could be in the situation to make that a challenge? What are the sort of things we need to overcome to make it possible?
I mean, Meta is doing a good job in terms of trying to get more people on to understand what the metaverse is and doing trainings. In East Africa, we struggle to find talent a lot.
So people who actually do the stuff.
Yes,
yeah.
So we end up doing the training and then we onboard them and then we finally have, so we've been doing our own sort of trainings for ourselves, but there's still a lot of manpower lacking in terms of that. And I think once you have many people kind of having access to these tools, it's now easier to create, and then we like to call them the realities, so that people can see the African realities. And I think being immersed in an African story is so powerful, because all these stereotypes quickly fly away. You're now free to like go through it in a 360 way. It's not directed in that sense, like where with 2D you have this rectangle or square format. I mean, it's really powerful to have a 360 video or an immersive experience from Africa that provides more context of what we're about and what we're going to do.
So what you're saying is it's much, much more than seeing a good picture. It's really being in an immersive environment, seeing Africa, almost tasting it as it were,
yeah.
From that point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even driving conversations around policy. Okay. We did some interesting stuff with Machakos County, and they were able to see, you know, all these tourist sites in VR, and they're like, oh wow, we need to do more, we need to make sure they look better, so that when we're creating content like this, it looks great. So it even has a way of influencing policy in very interesting ways.
What are some of the economic opportunities, right? I'm now thinking about the commercial side of this. You know, what are the possibilities? Also, what are the challenges, again, from achieving those through participation of different stakeholders in Africa within the metaverse?
I think SMEs is where the money is at. We are currently working with very big groups of SMEs and telling them, fine, for a teaser, we'll make you a filter. Try before you buy, use it, run ads with it. If you find value, come, we'll create something bigger. If you don't find value, let's see where we can correct that, or how can we make sure that you get value out of it. We've had very successful campaigns with SMEs, especially in Nairobi. Others are multinationals who got funded, but they're still like medium-sized. So I would say that's primarily where the money is, where small to medium-sized businesses can actually use this to communicate the product, to immerse people into different and accessible customer experiences. The challenge would be, of course, sometimes some of these devices are not locally available. So, like, we have to import. It's not in this market.
And this is on the consumer side, right?
Yes. So when we're sending an invoice for how much it actually costs, everybody's like, yeah, I don't think so. But we found ways, we've gotten good logistic partners, we've found ways to mitigate that cost and make sure that the technology is accessible to anybody. We feel like the use case is too good to pass that opportunity. We find ways and through our partners to make sure that that cost is reduced.
So a lot of education, sometimes maybe looking at being more cost effective, and that sort of is driving uptake.
Exactly. I mean, we have other partners within the VR, AR side of things that allow us, that give us discounts that allow us for our clients to have lower invoices and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been an interesting way to also sort of lobby for them to use the technology in a way that's needed. Yeah.
Now, earlier today we spoke a little bit about one of your clients. I think they sell glasses or
Yes.
That sort of thing. And I think I'd love you to share with the audience maybe what you're doing there, because
Yeah.
I think many a time people are sort of trying to get a grip with what does metaverse mean, or how can I actually use it. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what this is doing for this organization and how it's actually helping drive sales.
Great. So we are working with a French company called Mami, and Mami in French means grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, and they sell eyewear. So they're trying to appeal to the youth, and the youth use Instagram filters over and over and over. So why not take the opportunity where Meta has provided a chance for businesses to create customer experiences that can actually lead to direct sales. So like we can recreate your glasses in 3D, and people who are using filters can try it, send it to you and buy it. And this was a collaboration between Mami and Bensoul, a very popular singer from the Sauti Soul label.
Yeah, that group, yes.
Yes. So that collaboration also sort of even more appeals to the youth. So they've been able to kind of use that filter to drive sales, to run ads with filters, and create a customer experience like none other, where none of their competitors are doing that. Optica is not doing that, Boss is not doing that, so on and so forth. So they've been able to have a market advantage on using new technology and getting where the youth are in the market.
Great. So let's talk about education and training, because I'm sure a lot of the young people in this room want to know. You've talked about international customers. It sounds like it's a growing market. The metaverse is commercially viable. How do they get started, and what are some of the, you've already talked about having to train internally, but what are the opportunities around education and training so that they can upskill to the point where they can do this commercially, possibly find a career in this space?
Meta is running already some training programs, but also we kind of are trying to appeal to our partners to give us resources to be able to do that. Insta360 is a big player in the game, and they're offering to give us almost like 100 cameras to train people within East Africa. Who else? We've also talked to Unity, Unreal Engine, all these software companies are asking us, what are you up to? We're also working with universities such as the University of Wits in Cape Town, no, in Johannesburg, and Cape Town University in Cape Town, to also upskill in Southern Africa, which has been quite interesting. So I think there's a lot of effort both from the studios and also from Meta to sort of train and give access to this content, not to the material and the hardware, because now the issue is you can't learn it and not have the hardware, which is interesting because we are already having conversations with Lenovo and Samsung around if we were to do AR trainings, could they provide phones or tablets or things like that, so that people can learn practically and go home and still use it, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So I think getting the gadgets themselves, whether it's the VR headsets,
yeah,
the AR headsets, and even just the ones that work on tablets or phones, it's a big requirement, I think, for training to be effective, correct?
Yes, and we're quite open. Every time we find an artist who has kind of taken initiative to learn, whenever we're not using the headsets, we just give it to them. They continue building. Sometimes we co-pitch so that they understand the business side of things. Yeah, we try what we can.
How important do you think it is when it comes to cultural narratives? Because again, one of the challenges I think with the metaverse right now is that I think Africa is underrepresented.
Yeah.
And we have all these wonderful stories, wonderful perspectives around Africa and what makes Africa unique. How do we tackle that? How do we get into making sure that our stories, our point of view is included? And more importantly, what do you think the impact could be when there's more and more African content within the metaverse, and how this may shift or change perspectives of the people in the continent of Africa?
I think, apart from, of course, upskilling, I mean, we really have to sort of sit down and ask ourselves, what do we want to use this for? What kind of stories do we want to tell? Because often when we think about African stories, we start thinking traditional, but there's also nuance to the current, to the urban, and what it means to be in this Western world, but in Africa. And getting to this, being able to, like I said, give access to people to build, to iterate, find business. We can then go to conferences like this, or in Europe or in Asia, South America, and say, hey, we're also doing this, by the way. And they're able to kind of see, and they're like, okay, wow, so this is the metaverse of Africa. This is how it looks like. And we've been trying to sort of assist as many XR or VR, AR companies within Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, and kind of create a community around what kind of stories do we want to tell, how are we going to tell them, come up with our own sort of, we self-govern, ideally, and create some of these rules or kind of guidelines that would assist us to represent Africa in the best way possible.
I like what you're saying. So rather than the cliche, traditional African stories, there's also the more modern, more contemporary, what are African people about today? Almost like, I always like to think of it as the Afro-future, almost the Wakanda style. Yeah. Can we also show the cool side, the modern side, the progressive side of Africa, and not just the historical or cliche narratives, correct?
100%. Because even the now, we keep on talking about the past or the future, the far future, but there's also the now. Yeah. Who are our new heroes? Who do we look up to? What are the issues? What are the wins? What are the successes? What are the urban myths, right? So even telling more nuanced stories provides an even better experience for the world to be like, oh wow, so this is how nuanced Africa can get. Yeah.
And I think we can see some of that already happening through music, right? I think the other day I was reading about the likes of Burna Boy and some of the big artists. The numbers they're pulling in international stages are now comparable or even bigger than some of the local artists there. So there is an element that music is proving this is possible. But now the metaverse could be yet another dimension where we're able to eventually progress and expand that African narrative globally, right?
100%. Like it's a new canvas.
Yeah.
It's more of like an African renaissance, where this time, this medium, we get to choose how we represent ourselves. When photography and film came to Kenya, it was driven by the colonialists. Music, the same thing. Most of these art forms are they were dictated by others. Our identity that is. So for me, it feels like the metaverse provides a kind of like a clean slate for us to be like, hey, this is who we are. Yeah.
Another question I think that's really important here, and I think you've alluded to it already, is what role does government play and technology partners, the likes of Meta and others, in making this come to reality? How do you see government and technology platforms playing in this space?
I think this might be controversial, but things like tax breaks, sort of hearing out what partners like Meta would have to say and taking that into consideration, because when we've gone to government offices, what we've met is resistance in terms of, yeah, this is too new, how do you distribute this, how do you do this, and there's not a chance of, yeah, let's give this a chance, let's run a pilot, let's do this. I think government needs to open its heart more to testing, running pilots, receiving reports and saying, fine, did this work, did it not work, why did it not work, and why did it work? And giving a chance to people like Meta, studios like us, to sort of just create this new industry and provide employment, give opportunities that are not just locally, but also within Africa. Yeah.
And as we're talking about Africa, there's obviously Africans living abroad, what we like to call the diaspora. Do you think they have an important role to play in realizing the metaverse in Africa, for Africa and the world? What part can they play in making the metaverse something common and embraced within the African context?
I think they have such a powerful role because they represent us there. So we've worked with the Temple University in America, Philadelphia, and those were one of the conversations we were having, where like, how do we get content there? How do we distribute? How do we create these stories? And how can the diaspora also send their stories to us? And we have had such great partners in Finland, in Paris, in Philadelphia, in Brazil, where we're able to kind of have that exchange. And I think it's quite powerful, because then that's how you get into that market, where you're able to kind of just share content, share IP, and co-license together.
And possibly my last question before, if we do have time, giving the audience an opportunity to ask us those questions. If I was today one of the people in the audience, one of the young people, and I wanted to get a start on the metaverse based on your experience and knowing what works, where would you start, and how would somebody be able to build a career or a profession or a business that is built on top of the metaverse?
I think the internet is often the first thing you need to think about. I mean, if you just do a simple Google search of how do I make VR content, how do I make augmented reality content, and so on and so forth. The Meta website also has quite a lot of information that would allow you to kind of just get a start with or without the devices. And like I said, we often invite artists who have already kind of dived into it and have interest, and we try to kind of onboard them with our clients, or co-pitch on ideas that they may have, or sometimes even distribute the content they've created. So I think it's all a matter of starting and just going to the websites, looking through what Meta has in terms of information, and yeah, it's a great place to start.
And I just forgot one last question, which is, what is the implication of the metaverse for traditional industries, things like agriculture, manufacturing, the stuff that we already do in the real world, but how do you think the metaverse will change some of the more traditional spaces?
I don't like to overhype things. I don't think it will revolutionize or change industries forever, but rather make it better and make it more standardized and easier to use and more immersive. I think it's going to change internal communications for a lot of companies, whereby when we're talking about working virtually, we also mean like being in the metaverse. Everybody has a headset and we are kind of doing work in the metaverse. For engineers, you can iterate and build 3D models together. For the service industry, you can create simulations of AI avatars that can speak back to you, and the program can tell you failed here, you did well here, things like that. So for internal communications, that's our bread and butter, and it feels like looking at the 5-year plans of most of these multinationals, I think that's what's going to change the industries the most.
So what you're saying is that in many cases it's going to become a virtual environment where they are doing things they used to do in the real world that were much more expensive, much more time consuming, much more ineffective, and through the metaverse all sorts of new possibilities that open up.
100%.
Yeah. So at this point, again, time allowing, if there's anyone in the audience who has a question, as you've heard Waleed's story, incredible story starting from when you're 17 years old, I think he's the perfect candidate to give you any additional insights or feedback on what are the opportunities for you within the metaverse. So I don't know if anyone has a question. I don't know if there's a mic here that's available to go around, but would love to hear your point of view for anyone who has any further questions for Waleed. I see 2 hands, one here at the front, one at the back. Maybe we can go with the lady here at the front.
Thank you very
with the green jacket. Okay. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Hello, Waleed. Thank you very much for that great and insightful presentation. My name is Stephanie Kobelo Musombi. I'm the creative director of Wastewear and Lutia Kobelo, which is a sustainable fashion brand. I think my question to you would be, would you have a more specified list of probably people who would work in the VR space? Is it just limited to people who are in the IT or space, like programmers, or is there a more broader capacity for other roles?
I think the primary skills that you need to have is 3D, so Blender, Unreal, and Unity. And then for filmmakers, yeah, it's quite easy because a 360 camera is not so different from a normal camera. Of course, it has its own different rules. But illustrators, digital artists, they can all kind of work on both ways, because when you're building these 3D worlds, of course, you're going to need a UI, UX thing. You're going to need some sort of design and stuff like that. But not just for VR, but also for AR. So AR primarily, augmented reality primarily is 3D. So Blender, Unity, Unreal should be your best friends. Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the gentleman at the front. I think there's a gentleman at the back also who asked a question. Yeah.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
You've mentioned filmmaking, which is my forte. So I have a question in terms of the metaverse and AI in relation to distribution when it comes to the film industry. And also, I would like to know what role would virtual reality play when it comes to in matters distribution, basically. Can we use VR as a way of showcasing our films? Is it something that is cost friendly? Is it something that is achievable? Thank you.
I think it's quite important, and we do have a stand after this. You can go and have a look. But it's important for me to make the distinction between a normal film and a 360 film. So a 360 film is shot with a 360 camera that has 2 or more lenses that often overlap. So that means when you wear the headset, when you look behind, it's like you're actually there. So if you're talking about using normal films to distribute that, it really won't work. But if you're talking about 360 films, we're coming up with an interesting way of doing it. We want to work with film festivals, showcases and stuff like that, to be able to have like a section of a VR cinema where we have multiple headsets that are synced together and people are able to watch those films. And if you're talking distribution, you have to talk about money. So there's an opportunity to shoot 360 ads. So the ads play before the film. You make your money. And of course, ticketing. Those are some of the things that we're going to be trying next year to sort of get the industry running. Currently, we're trying to talk to each and every mall VR station to talk about what it did look like to have a 360 film, marketing material and stuff like that, and we cost share. You take this much, we take this much. So it's getting there. I think we've been thinking about it a lot, and I think it's going to be doable. Yeah.
Sorry, Walid, maybe I can interject as well. I think there was something he might have asked about AI. Maybe, I think we had a conversation earlier today. You said something about how you envisage using AI within the metaverse.
Yeah, so we make simulations that have hand tracking, and sometimes the service industry wants to use the technology, but we can only script an avatar up to a certain point. So through machine learning and AI, we're able to kind of give it a lot of parameters and a lot of information about a very specific topic that can allow you to. So for example, we are working with the University of San Francisco, California, to create a simulation whereby black doctors who have biases towards black women, because often you find if it's a man, he might not necessarily take a woman seriously, especially in the rural areas. So
Thank you, Brother Walid. My name is Abdullah, and my questions are 2. 1, how can one monetize metaverse? And the second question is, what is the relation between the virtual world and our physical world?
So to answer your second question first, the physical world is physical and the virtual world is virtual. So, and I think that's quite obvious. But for the first question, it would be, let's say there's a business that is struggling to carry their machine everywhere to showcase. So you can simply make an augmented reality filter through Instagram or Facebook, and they can simply have devices where somebody can scan the ground and that machine will pop up instead of carrying it everywhere. So that saves, that's actually even green, because they're not using cars or anything to sort of lift it, so they're not using fuel to do that. You can look at, if a company is, a mining company keeps on hurting their own trainees during training, you could be like, I could simulate whatever you want to simulate into the virtual world, and people can safely do it virtually so that they don't get hurt in real life. So it's just a matter of what is the problem, and then you apply how the metaverse can solve that issue.
Maybe I can just add something to that. You know, have you heard of something called Roblox before? Or Minecraft? There are people who've made thousands and thousands of dollars building virtual assets or digital assets in those environments, because all of those platforms are actually a form of metaverse. And some of them are building incredibly successful careers, creating things that people can buy in their spaces. And I remember like 5 or 6 years ago when my son was younger, it came to his birthday, he said, I don't want a toy, I don't want anything, I want like a virtual coupon so that I can buy things within Roblox so that he can flex, you know that word flex, huh? In front of his friends when he's playing Roblox. So even for the younger people, you find that even valuing digital assets more than physical assets in the real world. So those are some of the ways, if you can create stuff like that and it's popular, it's a way of monetizing as well.
100%.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frances, and I'm from the Seychelles Islands. Pleasure to be here. It's very, very exciting. So my question is quite general. So is there any plans? Obviously, creators and just being digital is a big deal now, and it kind of gives us hope as youth to be out there. So I just wanted to ask, is there plans to implement it in education? You know, how to be creators, what to add when it comes to marketing as a business as well. So that's my first question. In Seychelles, I just started my YouTube channel just to spread more awareness about our islands, basically. And I found out that you can't monetize Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I don't know if that's the case for any other African countries, but I think that's kind of, you know, a dead end. But yeah, I'm not sure where to go or to find more information, if it's YouTube themselves blocking it or the country. So yeah, just, yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah,
Thank
that could
you.
be a meta question, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got meta in the house. So straight from the horse's mouth.
Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, so I must say that my name is Phil Odur, Policy Programs Manager at Meta for Sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, we do have, we've started some education programs, particularly on augmented reality. We do have a partnership with Africa Leadership University at present that is training creators, individuals, developers, whoever is interested, particularly the youth from the African continent, on how to develop using augmented reality and how they can deploy that onto maybe different surfaces like Instagram and so on, which creators can actually take advantage of. When it comes to embedding that into the curriculums, maybe national curriculums, that's something that we are encouraging policymakers to take up, because new and emerging technologies has to be part and parcel of an ongoing discourse. We can't wait for it to fully mature before we start having discussions around how to put it into our national curriculums, at least at different levels, so that we are not left behind, and then also people can take advantage of these new and emerging technologies as they develop, as opposed to let's wait for it to mature before we actually fully utilize it. So I know that there is a registration for folks who are interested to take some of the training. The virtual training will be taking place today from 6 p.m. And that is 3 p.m. GMT, right? 6 p.m. local time. So you can register and go through the training. And then there are many other courses that are available online. Some of them are, of course, not cost. There's some on Coursera. I think Unity also have like very long courses around virtual reality and how that you can develop around that, amongst others. But as Meta, we are starting to bring these, courses and also training programs out there for creators and people to take advantage of.
Let me take. So I'd like to answer the question on monetization. So one clarification, YouTube is not a Meta platform, it's a Google platform. Meta is WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, Threads, and some of the hardware that he talked about, like the Oculus devices. That's what is part of the Meta family. We are well aware that monetization is not accessible for many countries across our region. I think so far probably South Africa only, but these are very these are ongoing discussions. In recent times, even discussions that policymakers are beginning to have with our company. Many of the presidents have asked for this, especially President of Kenya and some of the region. So I believe that there are plans to open up monetization more sooner than we anticipated. So very soon we'll be hearing some good news. Thank you.
Just to emphasize, the training at 6 p.m. is virtual, so you don't have to come back here. You can take it from wherever place you'd be. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Maina. So my question is, what is the relationship between the metaverse and blockchain? And how is the metaverse going to influence applications of the future?
Well, I can't really speak to blockchain, I'll be honest, but there is conversations around using blockchain for security stuff. So protecting IP, instead of sending APKs to people, somehow just using blockchain to do that. But I think in terms of like other technologies and intersecting with the future, I think the bit about virtual reality and augmented reality is like it's so multidisciplinary. Like there's so much that can be intersected into it that the list is endless. I've just mentioned machine learning and AI, blockchain, NFTs, yeah, you name it. I think it's so easy to plug in because if you're talking about 3D, if you're talking about 360 films, which is just ideally animation and 2D films, the same way they have like this clay perspective to them, like you can mold them into anything that you want. I think that's also how the metaverse is, where you can really intersect different technologies with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know how we're doing for time, but I think there might have been one more question, or are we done?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to our Meta folks. There's Metaverse and then there's the Meta Facebook. Are the two synonyms or one is using AI? Because there's Metaverse and then there's Meta, the company.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as you said at the beginning, when I was kind of presenting Meta, I mentioned that we are a private tech company, and we have a family of apps. I listed one of the ones you're familiar with, Facebook, Instagram. So in the past, the company was called Facebook, just as the app. But back in 2021, end of 2021, we changed name, and the company is now named Meta. So the change of name was also in line with the vision of the company around what the next step in terms of internet is, which is the metaverse. So it was also one way for us as a company to publicly express our interest in contributing in building this new technology, which is the metaverse. So whenever you hear Meta, think about it as the name of the company, and the apps that are part of the family of apps of Meta are then Facebook, Instagram, and others. So Facebook was the previous name of the company. Thank you.
Company is not building the metaverse.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good that my colleague is reminding me that it's good to put this emphasis on the fact that the metaverse doesn't belong to one technological company. It's a technology that will be built by a large number of companies. And as I mentioned, the idea also to help the user experience it at another level is to work towards the interoperability of the metaverse, so that any company that is creating a metaverse will enable its users to move from one universe or one environment, or digital space to the other, even though it belongs to a separate company or a different company. So there are many that are working on that outside of Meta. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kelvin, and I'm founder of a community-based organization in Laikipia County, where we offer free tech skills to the rural parts of our county. So my question would be to Mr. Kilazi, with regards to the augmented reality technology and other technologies that you work with. The question is there a basic minimum, a bare minimum in terms of the type of computers that people can use to do the AR, VR programs? Because sometimes in the rural communities they might be having so much in skill, but they are limited in terms of hardware. So is there that a bare minimum in terms of the capabilities in the computer to do the AR? Maybe the other question would be to Meta, that we have been hearing that there are so many trainings that the Meta company has been offering. If they can be, they can trickle down to the rural communities, because most of the time it's usually focused on the universities, but the majority of the young people are not even in the universities. They are outside, even outside of our towns. So if we can try to really push them in the rural communities so that they can also get the opportunities that exist in Meta. Thank you.
I think I can go first. I think comfortably you need a 4 GB RAM computer that doesn't necessarily have to run a graphics card. I think you can get away with 2 GB RAM, but comfortably it would be 4 GB, which is not ideal, I know, because you can't run it on Raspberry or anything like that. We're hoping that maybe one day the Meta Spark platform will be online. That might make it easier. But yeah, I think between 2 and 4 GB RAM is what's needed. Of course, Windows, yeah.
Yes, so on the training bit, that's good feedback, but I just want to computers and so on, but we get all our implementing partners to focus not only on major cities, but also in rural areas. So that's something that we are continually going to do.
Okay, I think that will be the last question. That's the last question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ramadan Sadiq from Kenya Red Cross. I had a question. I had actually 2 questions. The first question I've been asked about the machine requirement. The second question is about data protection. I wish to really understand about the data protection, because the user data, it's vast. Too much data in one source. How are we protected as users?
That's a meta question.
So the data protection question, is it in the context of the metaverse, or more broadly if you're asking data protection as Meta? Okay, so first, privacy is one of those very key tenants when it comes to any of the products that we develop and apps and everything that we do. As in, we basically developed with a privacy setting from the onset to any, when we say we want to build a solution, we start with the privacy considerations, and that continues through the whole process until the interaction between the user, you as the user, and the data that we have. So we have our own, what I would say, internal regulation. We have a set of policies and rules we call our community standards. If you have some time, you can have a look at on our website. You'll see a very comprehensive extended community standards that will also tell you about privacy, how we handle our data, and the kind of policies we have around privacy as a start. But aside from that, we also operate within jurisdictions, and then we have laws that operate in those jurisdictions. From time to time, we are also obligated by the laws of a country to, respect maybe a set of rules in terms of data protection. But ultimately, one of the other things that I'd just like to highlight is that we always remind policymakers and everyone first to remember how the internet operates. So sometimes the data protection rules almost want to break the internet as we know it, because the internet allows free flow of communication within you here and somebody in Brazil, for instance. So sometimes the laws that come into place almost want to break what the internet means by those very prescriptive, localized kind of laws. So we always advocate for sort of like a global standards, a very global approach of looking at some of those standards so that it can allow the internet to continue thriving and existing. But I just want to assure you that data protection is one of the most critical and critical issues that we take into consideration when handling people's data.
Great, thank you so much for that. I think that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you very much for all of you who have joined us today. Oh, there's one more? Okay, and also Walid is going to be available, I believe, at the Meta stand in the back. So if you have any further questions or clarifications, he will be available to ask. Also the team for Meta, who you've seen here, will also be available to you if you have any further questions or clarifications. And I think, to Walid, thank you so much for sharing your great insights on the metaverse. And if you do have any last parting shots or comments, please do go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just create, start somewhere, be curious. I mean, I got into the industry with no equipment, no support, no nothing. So it shouldn't be a barrier to start trying to build things. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
A big one, guys, a big one. All right, so mine is very short and simple. It's just to close. We've come to the end of our session, and I must start by acknowledging a number of folks who are part of this, and also some of our dignitaries who attended the session in the morning. I saw some of them, and some have left. First is the Honorable Minister Pitso Letsoana. That is the Minister of Gender, Youth and Social Development. There was Honorable Tati Morosi. She gave her welcome remarks. That's the Minister of Information, Communication, Science and Technology and Innovation. And then there is Dr. Jacqueline Olwea. That is the UNDP resident representative from Lesotho. And there was also Moleboheng Mokodicho. That is the Senior Private Secretary to the Prime Minister. I think that's Lesotho as well. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues. Olivia, a big round of applause to Olivia. She's a policy manager for Meta. There was also Sarah Muyonga, our policy manager for Meta Eastern Northern Africa. Of course, a big round of applause to Moses and Walid, who just presented more about the Metaverse, the organizers as well, that is Youth Connect. But I also want to just mention a couple of things, just to reiterate some key pointers that I got from this session. From the Minister Ntati, she really emphasized the importance of us as young people embracing technology that will enable innovation. She also mentioned that it is important for leaders who are part of the continent and who are guiding us to really look at creating an enabling policy environment. What are some of the things that policymakers can do in terms of infrastructure, in terms of digital skills, in terms of enabling people to take advantage of new and emerging technologies? I think that was a very important one. To enable issues like job creation, there's also the element of employability, which is a key one. And she also mentioned the importance of responsibility, taking full responsibility for how we use technology. These technologies are very powerful, and we need to be as responsible as possible when utilizing them. My colleague Olivia, of course, walked us through what the metaverse is, the success of the internet and enabling and immersive experiences. She also highlighted some possibilities, particularly around social experiences, work experiences, games, which is also a key component of it, but also some key sectors that will benefit highly from the metaverse, like the tourism sector, the health sector, and education. And also reiterated how, as Meta, we are building responsibly to ensure safety, and some of the principles that we put in place as we're building the metaverse, such as transparency, issues to do with safety, user controls, inclusive, building for inclusion, but also the key economic opportunities that arise from the metaverse. And from Walid and Moses, first I tried to mention a lot of things. I think one thing that caught my eye that I must mention is, one, the opportunities are limitless. That is important, and you can actually make money. There's a question around, how do you monetize? He's running a business already on the metaverse, right? And he's been able to have, multinationals as some of his clients. He's been able to go into the tourism sector, which is amazing, especially for some of our countries like Kenya, amongst others. And I think that as young people, it is quite important if we can leverage and start harnessing the use of these new and emerging immersive technologies for our benefit. In closing, I want to thank you very much. And I want to just mention that our innovations will indeed power the future. And it is important to be early adopters, to really take advantage and leverage, the power of these technologies, and to build, new use cases that can enhance social and economic impact on our continent. And then also within the realm of emerging technologies, the possibilities, as I've mentioned, are limitless. Let's carry the spirit of collaboration and also a spirit of curiosity forward as we shape this world for tomorrow. As if we are curious, we are able to learn new things, and I would like to urge us all to do that. And in closing, let's be the pioneers of positive change, particularly using these new technologies, but also building them, and embrace the challenges. In Africa, we acknowledge that there are a couple of challenges, but also we need to celebrate the victories that that are enabled already on the continent using these new emerging technologies. And together, let's build a future where the technology empowers and unites us all. And with that, thank you very much. As Walid has mentioned, we have the showcase out there. Feel free to go and experience virtual experiences on the Meta booth. And for those who are also interested, feel free to register and participate in the training that is happening virtually later on at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.